And before I get into just my 4 brief slides that I brought this afternoon, I want to thank Dr. Cynthia Tejas, who, as one of our board chairs at the California Community Foundation, always provided a great amount of inspiration of her own, particularly in the work that we've prioritized to supporting the most vulnerable communities within LA County. Though we're called the California Community Foundation, our focus is LA County, which you know is a nation state. 88 cities, 81 school districts, 11 million people, and with deep need. And as one of 63 staff members there, it's been an honor and a challenge to do the work we do every day to uplift those vulnerable communities. I'm going to talk about a particular part of our work that we've prioritized, but also want to let you know that our next chair is a Bruin. Dr. Patrick Dowling, who some of you may know as the head of UCLA Family Medicine, will become the chair of our foundation come July 1st. So we've been in great hands over these years, and I'm really excited to see how our work unfolds as we go forward. So we've talked a lot, I can tell by your recent Q&A discussion, we talked a lot about the challenges to mental health in members of minority communities. I'm going to talk about some ways that we're working to advance that. Is there a clicker or? Oh, great, thank you. Speaking of advancement, let me advance the slides. Okay. So what happens when mental illness is criminalized? Just 4 names. 4 names that tragically have broken into the news cycle because of tragedies involving each of these men. And this is by no means a complete or fully representative list of all of the examples of how mental illness has been and can be criminalized. One right here at home, Ezell Ford, should be a familiar name to many of us. This gentleman was, in only days before Trayvon Martin was shot fatally in Florida, Ezell Ford in South LA was gunned down by an LAPD officer who probably did not fully appreciate the fact that Mr. Ford was in the grips of his own mental illness, that if there were perhaps more deep and inclusive and responsive training, there might have been a different result from the fatal shooting of Mr. Ford. There were many eyewitness accounts of this experience. There was struggle, and as you all know, it ended tragically. Charles Kinsey, a more recent example that happened in Florida. You might remember the gentleman who was a caretaker for an autistic patient who was protecting his charge, a young man, and was approached by a law enforcement officer and ultimately shot. Fortunately, not fatally, but he asked the man in progress, why are you doing this? And do you all remember what the officer said? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, a real gap there that led to a shooting, an unnecessary officer-involved shooting, while someone who was professional was protecting his charge, who was an autistic patient in North Florida. Khalif Browder, another name that you may be familiar with. This young man was in Rikers Island. He was in solitary confinement for extended periods, eventually released, and within the 2 years after that release, was funded by an anonymous donor to go to community college, was seemingly back on track, but eventually gripped by the very real trauma that this young man experienced, took his own life. And this has been a real well-chronicled story. You may have seen it in the New York Times and the New Yorker. And then finally, Jerome Murdoch, a veteran, served our country, homeless, mentally ill, sentenced to jail because he was found sleeping in a stairwell. Later found dead in a 101-degree cell. Also in Rikers Island. According to the autopsy, he died of heat exhaustion. We know there's probably a lot more to that story, all of these stories, and the many unnamed stories that afflict vulnerable men and women in Latino, African American, Native American, Asian American, all communities in this country. And I will tell you right up front, I am not a PhD, I'm not an MD, I'm a grant maker. And I love nothing more to partner with those of you who are the practitioners, who many of you who are in this room, who study this and research this. In fact, Dr. Tellez knows I tried to actually have my healthcare officer, who is a PhD, deliver this speech because she, Dr. Rose Villegas, who some of you know, is a behavioral psychologist and studies this and has spent a great deal of her work looking into mental health. What I know as a leader at California Community Foundation is that it takes a focus on systems to really try to move the needle on the work that we're doing. In UCLA and University of California, the departments of mental health, public health, and health in general are the large systems that we here in LA County look to partner with. In a typical year, we'll invest about $30 million in local nonprofits here in LA County. We know that though that's not enough. We know that our grant making, as substantial as it can be, is but a fraction of the $4 billion that Dr. Mitch Katz, for example, oversees with DHS, and even that may not be enough. I want to tell you about one encouraging response that we're seeing, and that's with LAPD, and some of you may be familiar with this. It's called the SMART unit, and SMART is an acronym for System-Wide Mental Assessment Response Team. This is a unit of LAPD that responds to issues that are involving mental health, possible 5150 status, and this is a team that's concentrated in downtown LA. We know there are 23 divisions within the LA Police Department, so this is only one of those 23 divisions. One, given the homeless population and the unhoused, has been focused in that particular arena, and I think this is a unit that we should watch and learn from, and perhaps there are ways to scale and expand the work that they're doing. I entitled this How a Foundation, a Community Foundation, is Responding to the Criminalization of Mental Health, and I want to give you just a few examples before I hand off my time. Our Bloom initiative is something we're extremely excited about. It is acknowledging a 5-year commitment from our board. The work that it has done has compelled our board to extend it another 2 years. And Bloom is an acronym for Building a Lifetime of Options and Opportunities for Men. It started with research and development and has evolved into its own intervention in addressing the turning away of young African American men in South LA from the probation system to and through high school. Why is that an important milestone? Well, because if you are Black, male, and a Californian, and you haven't finished high school, you stand a 90% chance of spending time behind bars by the time you're 35. 90% chance. Now, with a high school diploma, that 90% risk goes down to 12%. It's almost like a vaccine. Something that many of us take for granted. Just finishing high school has such a protective effect on this population. So what our Bloom Initiative is doing in partnership with Brotherhood Crusade and Social Justice Learning Institute, which you see here listed next, is partnering with these young men to help them focus and address the trauma and the experience they've had in growing up. Many of them in single or single-parent households, and many of them as transition-age foster youth themselves with their own stories of trauma to tell. So we're really proud of this initiative and see it as a powerful intervention. Another couple of things I want to mention. We've partnered with the UMA Clinic, which you may be familiar with. This is the University Muslim Medical Association, which was co-founded by Dr. Yasser Aman, who now works with Mitch Katz. And this is a clinic that's addressing the unique needs of our Muslim community, based in South LA, and actually Dr. Aman was acknowledged as one of our unsung heroes by CCF about 6 years ago. PACT, Preparing Achievers for Tomorrow, is a unique initiative as well. We have an anonymous donor who came to us about 6 years ago, and she challenged us to invest in the lives of young Latino and African American students in South LA. Students who she knew didn't have the artistic and cultural enrichment opportunities to complement the work that they're doing in the classroom. And so over the past 5 years, we've invested $12.5 million in these young folks in partnership with local high schools. And it has generated really phenomenal work. One aspect of that has been focusing on their own socio-emotional health, in helping them to resolve issues of anger management, self-esteem, and we did pre and post self-assessments for these young folks between 14 and 18 years of age. And what we saw were real marked measurable improvements for them, some of them through soccer, some of them through martial arts, some of them through music. But through this Preparing Achievers for Tomorrow initiative, really positive advancement for them. And then I just want to wind up here with a look at some of the young folks who we've worked with through these various initiatives. You see in the upper left-hand corner there a group of our Bloom young men at Cal Poly Pomona, where they spent a weekend with the faculty there. And keep in mind, these are 14 to 18-year-old young men who've all been on probation. Many of them have not set foot on a campus like this, and we create opportunities for them to spend nights and weekends on these campuses to finish high school and hopefully to go on to actually matriculate and really feel the power of an investment in a future to look for outside of the juvenile justice system. On the upper right, you might recognize the gentleman on the far right, Associate Vice Chancellor Keith Parker, who came to speak with our Bloom youth at one of our town halls a couple years ago at LA Tech College. And then lower left-hand corner, the work we did with our PAT youth at LA Southwest College. Notice we're always trying to be, on campuses to give these young folks the visual and the actual tactile experience of where they can be and should be beyond the system. And then finally, on the far right, a group of the young men from the Social Justice Learning Institute, all of whom ended up matriculating in Cal State Chico. So I look forward to the opportunity to interact with you through Q&A. These are just but a few examples of the work the California Community Foundation is doing to protect vulnerable communities. We could make a whole nother presentation on the work we're doing on deportation defense and work we're doing within the immigrant communities to integrate, to provide citizenship, to provide health care for children regardless of their immigration status. The list of things that we're not doing is very short. And so with that, I want to thank you for your interest in our work and welcome any and all questions.